everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Arash Rahmani, and in this video we're going to be exploring the fascinating story of a man who lived over 400 years ago, but whose life and whose works still influence and shape the way that we tell stories today. Before William Shakespeare became the most playwright in the history of English literature, there was another brilliant writer who actually paved the way for him. His name was Christopher Marlowe, but he was much more than just a poet and a playwright. He was a spy, he was a rebel, and he was a man whose life ended in complete mystery, but we'll get to that later. So without further ado, let's just dive into the turbulent life and the lasting legacy of one of the most intriguing figures from the Elizabethan era, Christopher Marlowe. So let's talk about his early life. Let's talk about where Christopher Marlowe came from. As you can see in the PowerPoint presentation, Christopher Marlowe was actually born in Canterbury, England in February 1564. Now here's something interesting for you. This was exactly the same year that William Shakespeare was also born. However, unlike Shakespeare, Marlowe came from a very humble background. His father, John Marlowe, was a shoemaker. In those days, if your father was a shoemaker, it was extremely difficult for you to rise above your social class. But Christopher Marlowe was exceptionally bright and intelligent. Because of that, because of his intelligence, he received a scholarship to attend King's School in Canterbury. And after that, he went on to study at Corpus Christi College at Cambridge University. This was a huge achievement for someone from his background. At Cambridge, Marlowe studied Latin, theology, and classical literature. He graduated with his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1584. Now, the subjects that he actually studied at Cambridge would later become incredibly important in shaping his plays. His education in classical literature meant that he knew the works of ancient writers like Ovid and Virgil very well, and this knowledge would later show up in his sophisticated writing. However, there was something strange about Marlowe's time at Cambridge. He was frequently absent from his classes. This wasn't normal behavior from a serious student, now, especially one on a scholarship. These mysterious absences would later fuel speculation about what he was actually doing during those missing school periods. And despite being absent so often, of course, he somehow maintained excellent grades. And this suggests that someone in a position of power might have been protecting him. Let's talk about the spy allegations that exists about Christopher Marlowe. Now, this, in my opinion, is one of the most intriguing aspects of Christopher Marlowe's life, his possible work as a government spy. In 1587, something very unusual happened. The university authorities temporarily refused to give Marlowe his Master of Arts degree. They had heard rumors that he had converted to Catholicism and had been leaving England illegally. In those days, this was extremely serious. And England was a Protestant country, as you guys know, and Catholics were often seen as the enemies of the state. However, what happened next was unprecedented. The Privy Council, which was essentially the Queen's government, stepped in to defend Marlowe. They issued a public statement praising his service to the crown, and they declared that he had done Her Majesty good service and deserved to be rewarded for his faithful dealings. For the government to make such a public statement was almost unheard of. Now, this intervention strongly suggests that Marlowe was working maybe as a spy or in some secret capacity for the English government. Most likely he was working under Sir Francis Walsingham, who ran Queen Elizabeth's intelligence service and network. And his job was to uncover Catholic plots against Protestant England. Regardless of what actually happened, this part of Christopher Marlowe's life has sparked a lot of controversy, especially as it relates to how he might have been involved with Queen's dirty work. But yeah, let's move on to some of his major works, because that's what we are here to do. So we're going to be talking about some of the most important works of literature and drama that Christopher Marlowe has written. I will also be working on explaining the literary style that has come to be associated with Christopher Marlowe. So let's turn to Marlowe's artistic achievements. Despite Marlowe's short career, he only wrote for about 6 years, and that's it. But despite that, he produced some of the most influential works of English literature that we'll get to one by one, starting with Tamburlaine the Great. This is a very fascinating work of literature. and let's see why. Tamburlaine the Great was written around 1587. The play tells the story of Tamburlaine, a Central Asian shepherd who rises to become a powerful conqueror. The story follows his meteoric rise and the brutal reign that followed as he defeats empire after empire. Christopher Marlowe actually wrote this as two separate plays. So part one actually ends with Tamburlaine's conquest of Persia, and part two shows his decline, madness, and the betrayals within his own family. What made this play revolutionary was Christopher Marlowe's use of blank verse. This means, as you guys know from the previous video, unrhymed iambic pentameter, a specific rhythm in English poetry. Marlowe was the first playwright to actually use this technique consistently on the English stage. We know from the previous video that Shakespeare was the one who actually perfected this use of blank verse in his plays, but let's not forget that it was Christopher Marlowe who consistently used it for English plays. His contemporaries called it his mighty line because it gave his characters' speeches a soaring, powerful momentum. So we have so many examples from this era, like the Elizabethan era, where other playwrights actually acknowledged the fact that they were also inspired to write in English. They were also inspired to actually write in blank verse because they had read or heard Christopher Marlowe's plays. The themes in Tamburlaine are also very groundbreaking. So the play explores unbridled ambition because Tamburlaine's hunger for glory knows no moral or even divine limits. It also examines hubris and divine retribution because his final downfall in the play suggests that when humans overreach, they usually anger the gods. Most importantly, however, the play shows the power of language itself. Tamburlaine conquers as much through his persuasive words as through military force. The dramatic impact of this play cannot really be overstated. It completely shattered the static morality plays that were very popular before Marlowe's age, and they were the ones that dominated 15th and early 16th century literature. But thanks to Marlowe, audiences saw now in Marlowe's plays a hero who was also a ruthless tyrant, but he was also a very persuasive speaker, using blank verse for the speeches of Tamburlaine, and Tamburlaine himself as a character succeeding in his conquests through the use of military force as well as language. This play also opened the door for a lot of psychologically complex and larger than life protagonists, the kind that we see later in Shakespeare's greatest works. Another important work that Marlowe has written for us is Dr. Faustus. Now, Dr. Faustus is considered to be Marlowe's masterpiece, and it was written in 1592. The plot of this work is simple yet profound. Dr. John Faustus is a scholar who becomes dissatisfied with traditional learning, and so he wants more knowledge than books can give him. So he makes a deal with a demon named Mephistopheles. In exchange for his soul, Faustus will have magical powers for 24 years. Now, at first, Faustus enjoys his new abilities, of course. He conjures spirits, he plays political pranks, and he witnesses classical pageantry. But gradually, he becomes tormented by guilt. He realizes what he has given up, and in the final act of the play, Faustus hesitates too long, almost, about repenting. When his time runs out, he's dragged to hell, of course. Now, stylistically, Christopher Marlowe mixes elevated blank verse for Faustus's grand speeches with prose for the comic scenes of the play. And this provides tonal contrast and keeps the audience engaged. He also uses choruses at the beginning and end to frame the tragedy in moral terms. And some of the most beautiful lines in English literature actually come from this play. Now, I can give you an example. For instance, when Faustus sees Helen of Troy because of his newly found powers, he says, "Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burned the topless towers of Ilium?" Now, this line blends classical mythology with Christian tragedy in a way that was completely new for the audiences of that period. But of course, if you were trying to choose probably one of the most memorable lines in the in the work, you would probably go with Faustus's final soliloquy, where he like begs time to stop so that he's not dragged to hell. And this is the line in the book. Oh, slowly, slowly run, horses of the night. Basically asking time to slow down so his time isn't up. Now, this work shows Marlowe's mastery of psychological terror as Faustus like desperately tries to avoid his fate. The themes in Dr. Faustus were like incredibly relevant to Marlowe's time, and they even remain relevant today. Like the play explores the limits of human knowledge. Faustus's quest for complete understanding backfires, well, spectacularly. It also examines the concept of sin and redemption throughout the play. So basically, what he has written in Dr. Faustus is very much like very much resonates with the readers of today's world, and that's why Christopher Marlowe is considered to be such a monumental, such an influential figure in the history of English literature. Another work that he has written, which is like super famous, is The Jew of Malta. And it's Marlowe's third major play, which was written again around 1590. And it tells the story of Barabbas, a wealthy Jewish merchant. When corrupt Christian authorities strip him of his property, he plots like an elaborate revenge scheme through poisoning, deception, and of course political manipulation. And of course the play ends in a mass slaughter, where like heroes and villains perish alike. The themes of this book are also like complex and morally ambiguous. The play explores religious hypocrisy and revenge, especially when like everyone claims to be pious, but somehow like deep down they're not really what they show the world to be. Another important work that's been written by Christopher Marlowe and is celebrated as another like major work by this famous writer is Edward II, and I'll give you like some time, or like you can pause the video and read my descriptions of it as well. Let's now move on and talk about Marlowe's suspicious death and the controversies surrounding him. In May 1593, Christopher Marlowe was accused of atheism. So the accusation came from a document which was called the Baines Note, and it was written by a government informer called Richard Baines. This document alleged that Marlowe had made blasphemous remarks. Please keep in mind that according to Baines, Marlowe had said some derogatory and blasphemous sentences towards Christ as well as Moses. And so these accusations were super serious. Not only was it socially unacceptable during Marlowe's time to be an atheist, it was also illegal and could be punished by death. And this thing happened during a government crackdown on suspected atheists and political dissidents. On May 30th, 1593, Christopher Marlowe was killed. So the official story is that he died in a tavern quarrel in Deptford, a town outside of London. He was supposedly meeting with three men at the house of Eleanor Bull, and according to witnesses, they spent the day eating and walking in the garden. In the evening, a quarrel broke out over who should pay for the bill, and during this fight, Ingram Fraser killed Marlowe in self-defense with a knife wound above the eye. However, there's something very fishy and suspicious about this story, and so a lot of people don't really buy it. There are a lot of theories about what actually happened. The first theory is assassination. According to this view, Christopher Marlowe was killed to silence him about the government secrets that he had been privy to, and he had learned during his spy work for Queen Elizabeth. And so because he knew too much, they wanted to eliminate him. The second theory is also that his death was actually staged. A lot of people believe that Christopher Marlowe actually faked his own death to escape persecution and live the rest of his life in exile. And then there's also another theory that says that, well, there was a genuine quarrel that broke out among the spies, and then he was actually killed over money or like intelligence that somebody else wanted to relay to the government, or something like that. So his death at the end of the day was very suspicious. So I told you about all of the theories that exist surrounding his death, and now let's talk about his legacy and his influence to actually finish the video. Despite his short life and brief career, Christopher Marlowe's influence on English drama was enormous and lasting. First and most importantly, I would say, he pioneered the use of blank verse as the standard medium for serious English drama. Before Marlowe, most plays were using rhyming couplets or other verse structures for drama, and his innovation provided later playwrights, including and especially Shakespeare, with a flexible and powerful tool for dramatic expression. Second, he expanded dramatic structure far beyond the simple medieval morality plays that had dominated English theater for centuries. His plays explored complex philosophical and psychological themes with unprecedented boldness. And third, his direct influence on William Shakespeare is undeniable and profound. We can trace specific connections between Marlowe's works as well as Shakespeare's greatest plays. Tamburlaine's powerful rhetoric echoes in Othello and Macbeth. Dr. Faustus's psychological complexity prefigures rhetoric, I would say the inner turmoils of Hamlet. And Edward II's political themes directly influenced Richard II and Richard III by Shakespeare. We can also talk about the moral ambiguity of the Jew of Malta, which kind of anticipates the character of Shylock in The Merchant of Venus. In 2016, Oxford University Press made a remarkable announcement. Based on detailed linguistic analysis, they credited Marlowe as the co-author of Shakespeare's Henry VI trilogy, adding fuel to the conspiracy theories that basically said that Christopher Marlowe and William Shakespeare were actually the same person. However, well, as we said, Christopher Marlowe lived a life that was brilliant, yet brief, controversial, courageous, and creatively explosive. In just 6 years of active writing, from approximately, I would say, 1587 to 1593, he completely revolutionized English drama and poetry, and he showed that theater could actually be mature, and way more important than just simple entertainment. It can explore our deepest questions about the human nature, about ambition, about knowledge, love, and of course, mortality. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey through the life of Christopher Marlowe. If you enjoyed this, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and please share it with your classmates or friends who are interested in learning about the history of English literature. So far, we've talked about I've given you an overview of 16th century literature. We also have been talking about some of the influential writers of the period, including William Shakespeare and today Christopher Marlowe. And we're going to continue our journey and talk about two more influential writers, Edmund Spenser and Sir Philip Sidney. And once our exploration of these wonderful writers are over, we'll be ready to move on to the next period of English literature. Once again, thank you so much